The grizzly bear is an extremely formidable and powerful opponent, but even he is inferior to some of his unusual relatives. Some take incredible and abnormal size, and the second, aggression, agility, and cunning. In this issue, we will show you the most dangerous and powerful bears in the world with which it is better not to mess. You will learn about the first death caused by a grizzly bear in Banff National Park. Click the like button and subscribe right now. Welcome to Wild Assault. The attack was sudden, unexpected, and brutal. On Monday, Shanun Rummell, a 50-year-old Choteau area resident and father of 9 children, suffered serious injuries to his hand, back, and arm after unwittingly surprising a grizzly bear in a barn in the middle of the farm. The family was left shaken by the attack, which happened a mile and a half from their home. As fast as that bear lunged and grabbed my husband, he would not have been able to get a gun or bear spray, even if he had one. His kids were home last night, and his wife told them to turn on the ceiling light. Let the dogs out. She wanted them close to the house. Their grisly encounter began with a neighbor's warning. The Rummells were driving home from Great Falls when they got a call from a farmer on a neighboring road saying he had noticed bear tracks near a pond between their 2 homes. He had been drawing water from the pond earlier, walked around, and found the bear tracks. They have had grizzly bears there before, and they socialize all the time. If they see bear tracks, they call out to each other. The neighbor knows they have 9 children. There are dogs, pigs, chickens, and goats. It is good for neighbors to be aware and do this for you. Jamie, Shanun, and their 12-year-old daughter stopped at the pond before heading home to see the trails for themselves. They were just about to leave. Jamie, along with his daughter, were walking back to their pickup truck. Shanun stopped to look in a neighboring barn to see if there was any old grain left there that might have attracted a bear. It was dark in the long abandoned barn. He only lowered his head and looked left, then right, and the bear roared and lunged at him as fast as it could. Shanun rushed to run, but he didn't make it in time and stumbled. The bear rushed past him, then turned and attacked. Jamie was turned the other way and didn't immediately see the grizzly, but she immediately heard its roar and her husband's screams. The bear grabbed him and tossed him around like a rag doll. He tried to beat him with his fists, but the bear became even angrier, roared fiercely, and kept hitting him hard with its huge paws. Shanun helplessly tried to defend himself, but he was too exhausted and weak to put up a decent resistance. The bear's attack went on for a seemingly eternity, but Shanun's physical strength was quickly running out. He realized that there was nothing he could do about the situation, and the bear would be the death of him. The last thing he heard were ferocious growls and sounds of fighting before everything went dark. Their 12-year-old daughter stood beside her. She looked at her father and shouted at the top of her voice, "There's a bear! There's a bear!" Jamie's first reaction was to put his daughter in the truck and start the engine. His wife's instinct was to start the truck, drive to him, and run over the bear if she could. She knew that if she got out of the car and ran over there, he would grab her. Jamie put the car in reverse, turned the pickup around to face where the grizzly was cutting up her husband, and then sped across the barley field. The sound of the truck's roaring engine drew the bear's attention away from Shanun. The grizzly stopped its attack, looked in the direction of the oncoming truck, and then took off across the fields. Jamie continued on her way, driving waist-deep in grain to the spot where she had last seen her husband. She had to drive slowly because the barley field showed ground, and she didn't want to run her husband down. When they got to a place where they could see him, he was lying face down in the dirt. He didn't move, and the daughter screamed, "Daddy is dead, he's dead." She told her he wasn't dead. He's going to be all right. When Shanun came to, he was on the ground, surrounded by blood and the bear's paws. His body was badly mangled, but amazingly, he was still alive. He examined his wounds in shock and realized that his wife had saved him. Shanun rose to his feet and walked slowly toward the truck. He stood up and blood rushed out of him. His shirt was torn and there was dirt in his teeth. The wounded Shanun got into the driver's seat and drove the pickup to where the field intersected with the road. Jamie told her husband that he should let her drive the rest of the way. He bandaged his arm because blood was spurting from everywhere. She called the hospital and said she was on her way. The bear had bitten through his palm and ripped a piece of meat out of it. He had 4 bite marks on his back and a large gash with teeth marks just below his shoulder. When his forearm was opened up, you could look down and see tendons and bones. Shanun Rummell was airlifted where he will undergo surgery on his arm. Upon arrival at the hospital, Shanun was given x-rays which showed that the bear had also broken some bones in his forearm. Doctors immediately began surgery to clean the wound, sew up the torn tissue, and repair the damaged bones and tendons. The surgery was successful, but Shanun will have to undergo a long period of rehabilitation to fully restore the function of his arm. Psychologically, Shanun also needs support. His event with the bear was extremely traumatic, and he is experiencing PTSD. He has been offered professional help to cope with these emotional effects and to overcome fears that may arise from the incident. It is good that Shanun will have the opportunity to spend time with his children. Children can be an important source of support and motivation for him. Having the opportunity to be around them, playing and socializing, will help create a positive atmosphere and encourage his recovery. Naturally, recovery will take time and effort. However, with adequate physical and psychological support, as well as the love and support of the children, there is every opportunity for Shanun to make a full recovery. 2 months into his full recovery, he was tearing off the doors of grain bins and eating barley and wheat. Rummell on the problems they faced. They set a trap and tried to catch him for weeks, but never did. Rummell said that she and her husband saw the bear last spring. It was in a field and could be seen tearing up ant hills and eating ants. It was a 3 or 4-year-old bear. It probably weighs about 400 pounds. The Rummell family moved to their current home in the country more than 20 years ago. Living with wildlife has been a part of their life on the Rocky Mountain front all that time, but the wife tells me that the threat from grizzly bears is getting worse. They have the entire Rocky Mountain front there, and they have to stay there. The problem is that there are too many bears, so the larger individuals are crowding them out, and they are coming down on our prairies. We need to put the fear back into the bears and start hunting so that when they see a human, they will run away. A black bear will see a human and run away because it's being hunted. And these grizzly bears see them and look at them as bait. Some aspects of her life were probably forever changed by the attack on her husband. They used to be able to go out in the backyard and feel safe. Now they just don't know what to do next. She used to get up early in the morning before dawn when it was still dark, put on her headlamp and go for a walk. She doesn't walk anymore. Bear spray, a stronger version of pepper spray, was not used in the bear attack. However, wildlife experts say it is essential and urge people to keep it on hand and be prepared to use it. If possible, travel and hike in groups of 2 to 5 people. The more people, the more noise, the less likely a bear will make contact with you. If you are in dense woods and can't see well, sing, clap, or yell. Don't even buy bear bells. They are almost impossible to hear unless you are 10 feet away, especially if the wind is blowing. If you see a bear from a distance, walk as far around it as possible. Don't try to get close enough to photograph it. The risk isn't worth the likes on Instagram. James Hayworth and his wife Laura were vacationing in Paris. It was a nice day and they went for a hike down to the river. When they got down to the river, they had a picnic and sat on the rocks. They enjoyed the beautiful view of the water and the surrounding nature. James pulled out of his backpack the lid of the glass jar of homemade strawberries they had picked yesterday and began sharing them with Laura. The weather was beautiful, clear skies, warm sunshine, and a slightly babbling river in front of them. James loved the tranquility of nature, and Laura enjoyed the beautiful scenery. You know, there were cars passing by, a very busy place near the main road, so they didn't think anything about attacks and stuff. When they were there, they were lying on the shore, about 6 feet away, James Hayworth and his wife Laura were lying on the rocks, and she saw 2 wolves, she thought. James looked up and saw 2 bear cubs playing in the water. Laura was frightened and immediately jumped to her feet, grabbing James's hand. They watched the cubs, who were carelessly swimming and playing in the water. They were obviously very small and posed no threat to them. James and Laura stepped back carefully, but just seconds later, a mother grizzly burst through the trees. She knocked him to the ground. He got up, yelling at her, but she kept coming. Boom! She knocked him down again. He quickly got to his feet and yelled to his wife, "Into the river, into the river!" He started running toward the river, but just as he reached it, it was as if he had been hit by a truck. The bear pushed him into the water and stood on top of him when he was in the water. The thought came to him that he was definitely going to die. He tried to pull himself out from under the bear, but her strength was overwhelming. He thought the water was beginning to flood his lungs, and he couldn't breathe. His thoughts became overwhelmed with fear and hopelessness. The bear got off him. He stood up and saw that the bearess was attacking his wife. She knocked his wife over, and Laura raised her hands to cover her face, and the bearess grabbed her arm. At this point, he started running toward the bear. The bear started running and dragged his Laura. When James was 2 to 3 feet away from the bear saw him and slowed its run. James, despite the danger, did not stop and continued to approach the bear. He yelled at it, trying to draw the bear's attention away from his wife. The bear turned around, concerned about his new adversary. James gathered all his strength and lunged forward sharply, hoping to draw the bear's attention away from Laura. At that moment, the bear released her and turned its huge head toward James. James approached the bear with determination, ready to grapple with it in a fight. He knew his chances were slim, but he couldn't just watch his wife in danger. The bear, seeing James's determination, slowed his run even more. James was closing in on him. His heart was beating frantically, and his thoughts were filled with only one goal: to save Laura. And then, at the last moment, when James was about to reach the bear, the animal abruptly turned and ran off into the forest. James stopped, exhaling and trying to calm his heart. He picked up his wife and dragged her as fast as he could to the other side. He saw the bear and cubs running off into the distance. At that moment, he and his wife were trying to figure out how to get out of there and started walking through the clearest possible terrain to get back to the car. James was yelling, making loud noises so the bear would realize where they were and not come any closer. They moved cautiously and slowly. It was quiet and desolate around them, only the rustling of the leaves of their own footsteps breaking the dead silence. James's wife was scared to death, but he tried to reassure her and tell her that everything would be all right. He knew that desperate yelling and clapping could distract a bear, and he wanted to use that to his advantage. That's when they heard the other guy yelling back at them. One of them looked back to the top of the cliff where the man in the red shirt was standing, and the other in the dark shirt. They heard him yell and shouted, "Help! Help! Help!" One of the guys warned, "Be careful, there's a bear up there." And the man replied, "Yes, I know there's a bear up there. We saw where it went." So his friend stayed on top of the cliff. Thank God these guys showed up. His friend stayed on top of the cliff, watching the bear, and then came down and directed them to where their car was parked. When they got to the top of the cliff, James ran, got his car, jumped in it, drove his wife back as fast as he could, put her in the car, and then he and his wife started tearing down the road to get her to the hospital. An ambulance appeared and they stopped. They began to give her first aid and called for a helicopter, and time dragged agonizingly slow. Every second it seemed that Laura's life was hanging by a thread, and only the rapid arrival of the helicopter could save her. The doctors mobilized. They checked her pulse, blood pressure, stopped the bleeding. They were prepared for such situations. Time passed, and finally the sound of a helicopter was heard in the distance. It was a life-saving sound, promising a speedy evacuation of the injured person to the hospital. As the helicopter landed, the medics transferred the victim to a stretcher and gently lifted him into the air. The heart of everyone on the scene was beating fast as the success of the operation depended on every detail. All the way to the hospital, they were tense and frightened. James's wife was moaning in pain, and he couldn't help but think of what could happen if they didn't make it in time. They arrived at the hospital after a few long minutes that seemed like an eternity. The medics immediately admitted James's wife and began to examine her. She was in very poor condition, and everyone expected to be able to help her. James and his wife were held in a separate emergency room and waited for the doctors. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly. Every second was full of anxiety and worry. Finally, the doctors came out of the room with a wary expression on their faces. They announced that James's wife had serious injuries and needed surgery. They had to start surgery immediately to save her life. Finally, after many hours of waiting, the doctors came out to James. They informed him that the surgery was successful and that his wife was in intensive care. She was in stable condition, but would need time to make a full recovery. When the bear lunged at James, the first feeling he had was that he was going to die. He thought he was going to die because he saw this powerful animal coming towards him, and there was no hope of stopping it. The bear was the biggest he had ever seen, and it was very angry. Even though it was just protecting its cubs, he imagined a scene from the movie Survivor. The thought came to him that he would be killed here, his wife would be killed, and they would lie there waiting for someone to find them. When the bear pushed him into the river, James realized he was going to drown. He thought the bear would continue to attack him, but it didn't. His wife, Laura, was in the hospital. She kept telling the choppers and everyone else, "Check my husband, check my husband." All Helicopter Man could say was that he was very lucky. The bear had taken him down twice, but he could tell he was okay. As soon as the bear fell James to the ground the first time and he felt its weight, he realized that nothing could be done. Man can't fight a bear. You can't. There is no way. The sheer weight of that bear. When he stepped on him, at the moment he was in the river, he felt like a truck ran over him. It was so heavy. It's not that they weren't prepared. They had bear spray with them, but when you're sunbathing and all of a sudden you're attacked by a bear, it doesn't care what you think you are. Nobody can react that fast and think, grab the bear spray, take the safety off, and spray the bear. He was 6 feet away from them and rushing at them. Even if you reach for him, you will fall. People need to realize that the animal needs to be respected, and this is not a joke. Be careful and take care of nature, because it is the only place where we can live. Conservation of nature is not just a matter of the environment. It is a matter of the survival of humanity as a whole. Jenny Gasse and Doug Inglis lost their lives while traveling in Canada's Banff National Park. 2 hikers killed in a grizzly bear attack in Canada's Banff National Park had time to send a desperate message before they died from their injuries. According to Colin Inglis, uncle of Doug Inglis, who was found dead last weekend along with his longtime partner Jenny Gasse and their dog, the emergency message read, "Bear attack bad." The terrifying message was sent via a satellite communicator. It was received along with an SOS signal caused by someone holding down the emergency button on the device for 3 seconds, so someone manually entered that text. This chilling message is direct evidence of the moment when a backpacking trip to enjoy the fall foliage turned into a tragedy. This case is also a mystery of sorts. How did 2 veteran backpackers, known for doing everything right, fall victim to a rare bear attack? The incident is the first grizzly bear-caused fatality recorded in Banff National Park in decades. The couple knew the area and were carrying bear spray. It appears that even the most thorough preparations could not have prevented the deadly attack. It is important to remember that wild animals are unpredictable, and even with the skills and tools to defend oneself, there is some risk. In such cases, measures should be taken to prevent conflict with wildlife, such as avoiding areas with high concentrations of bears, making noises, or wearing bells to prevent unintentional close contact. In summary, safety in nature is a shared responsibility and requires adherence to the rules and guidelines provided by parks and agencies to reduce the risk of such unpleasant events. When the Wild Animal Human Attack Response Team reached the campground, they found a bear-proof bag of food hanging from a tree, as recommended. An unloaded can of bear spray was also found at the site, indicating that the campers were trying to get the animal to leave. The couple, who are each 62 years old, knew the area, Red Deer Valley and Banff, well. They went to the area several times a year on long hikes. They had been here in the spring. Jenny Gasse and Doug Inglis worked together in research at the government agency Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. In their spare time, they were avid outdoorsmen. Going on a week-long hike in Banff, the couple used an inReach device to send regular updates to Inglis and Gasse's mother. According to Inglis, the couple planned their adventures carefully. They were cautious by nature. In their professional lives, the couple worked together in laboratories doing agricultural research. Doug and Jenny were very experienced. They did everything right. It was an unusual circumstance. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Earlier in the day, the couple had told Inglis that they had experienced a delay during the hike, but that everything had worked out. According to Inglis, they had likely gotten to the campsite and were making dinner when the message was sent, shortly before 5 p.m., but a few hours later things went horribly wrong. The attack took place in a very remote area. Doug Inglis and Jenny Gasse were camping in a permitted area. At that point, according to there was no bear warning or closure of the area. According to the agency, they received the same message from the inReach device as Inglis, alerting them to the bear attack at about 8 p.m. local time. It took several hours to reach the scene of the brutal attack. The response team had to get there by ground because bad weather prevented the use of a helicopter. The area is very remote, and there were no witnesses to the attack. We will never know all the details of what led up to the attack, nor will we speculate. When their bodies were found, Jenny and Doug were next to each other, not far from the tent in their stockings. "That's very unusual," he said, noting that it was damp outside. Their boots and shoes were in the tent, indicating that something had happened and one or both of them had come out of the tent. The bear tried to attack the rescue team. The tragic incident occurred after midnight when the response team arrived on scene and found the bodies of 2 campers and their dog. While working to investigate and clarify the circumstances, they noticed a bear that exhibited aggressive behavior and attempted to attack the response team. With the safety and protection of the team members in mind, and to prevent further threat from the bear, the decision was made to shoot the bear. This was done to protect lives and ensure the safety of the group. In situations such as this, where a bear exhibits aggressive behavior and poses a threat, killing the bear may be a necessary action. However, each case of killing a bear must be studied and analyzed in detail by the appropriate authorities to determine if the killing was a justified and proportionate response to the threat. The necropsy showed that it was a non-lactating old female, over 25 years old. The condition of the bear was found to be satisfactory, but her teeth were in poor condition and the amount of body fat was less than normal for this time of year. The bear was not wearing tags or a collar, unlike bear 148, a large bear that was shot in 2017. This bear is known for its close encounters with humans, such as when it chased hikers in Banff or when it chased a woman on a kick sled. But in general, bear attacks are extremely rare. There have been 3 non-fatal contact encounters with grizzly bears in Banff National Park in the past 10 years, Inglis said. Inglis agrees that it is futile to speculate about what exactly happened to his nephew. These were wonderful people. They were real special people. And although he's Doug's uncle, he also considers the couple his close friends. He's known Doug since he was born. He is more like a little brother than a nephew. Doug Inglis was a scientist, and Jenny Gasse was a research technician in his labs. They worked for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and were associated with the University of Lethbridge, which remembers them as people who made a huge impact through their own research and mentoring of students in fields ranging from agricultural biotechnology to neuroscience. They have been together almost all the time since they came to the university. They were a team in all areas of their lives, whether it was work, home, gardening, canoeing, or hiking. The couple cared deeply about protecting the environment, and they loved Canada's national park system, seeing themselves as custodians of this wilderness. They were wonderful people. They were very gentle people. Inglis said this tragedy is also a reminder that we have no control when we go into the wilderness.